Doubt Bernie Madoff? Doubt Bernie? No, you doubt God. You can doubt God, but you don't doubt Bernie.
Fixture on Wall Street, Bernie Madoff.
Bernard Madoff.
Bernard Madoff.
Bernard Madoff.
Bernard Madoff.
Bernie Madoff was son to Jewish immigrants. His early years were spent during the Depression of the 1930s, followed by the events of World War II, including the atomic bombs and the Cold War, which defined the 40s. The 1950s brought a desire for normalcy and peace. This new hunger was an early development of modern society as we see it today. The Madoff family had opportunities to earn and consume in abundance, but they struggled to make ends meet. His father had several businesses which failed. It reached a point where his home was subject to a tax lien. Motivated by a desire for wealth and luxury, Bernie was determined to succeed. Bernie met Ruth Madoff, the love of his life, while they were in high school, and they married in 1959. In 1960, shortly after their marriage, he established Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities and set up a desk at his father-in-law Saul Alpon's accounting firm. As the market witnessed a massive drop, Bernie suffered a loss of nearly $30,000 from client funds which were under his management. Instead of acknowledging his excessive risk-taking, he decided to borrow $30,000 from his father-in-law to reimburse his clients and make them whole. This move presented him as a certified genius in the eyes of his investors. Rather than losing their money, he seemed to have sidestepped the market's most significant downturn since 1929, while other managers on Wall Street faced losses. I spent a lot of hours with a psychologist here trying to analyze why I did what I did. Look, one of my problems was I always wanted to please everybody. Bernie had the choice to be honest and admit his mistakes. Let's take a look at how the firm was structured by Bernie Madoff to create an illusion of legitimacy and trust. On the surface, he presented himself as a seasoned and reputable market maker. Market makers are essentially middlemen. When individuals buy stocks, they are not directly purchasing them from the seller. Instead, a market maker like Bernie steps in and buys the stock from the sellers, holding them in inventory to sell to potential buyers in the future. Market makers earn a commission on both sides of the transaction, charging minimal amounts such as pennies for their services. On the side, Bernie ran an illegal investment advisory business involving around $60 billion. This involved managing money for investors and making investments on their behalf. Bernie had failed to register with the Securities and Exchange Commission as an investment advisor for over 4 decades. SEC is a government agency created to regulate the securities markets and protect investors. Of course, Bernie couldn't do it alone. The legitimate market-making business was handled by Bernie's 2 sons, Mark and Andrew, while the illegal side was led by Bernie's main man, Frank DePascali. Frank DePascali fit the description of a right-hand man perfectly. He was an Italian who grew up in Brooklyn and was described as a character straight out of The Godfather by his colleagues. He exhibited unwavering loyalty and devotion to Madoff. He supervised all the other people. He was very talented when it came to helping build the system. He did pretty much everything. By the 1990s, Bernie Madoff had become a prominent Wall Street figure, renowned as one of its giants. His legitimate market-making business controlled a substantial share of the trading volume in New York, ranging from 7% to 10%. He had also served as the director of NASDAQ for 3 years in the early 90s. Today, NASDAQ is the second largest stock exchange in the world and trades companies like Apple, Google, Tesla, Facebook. It's important to understand that not only the market participants, but regulators like SEC and the government looked at him as a trustworthy figure, unlike others on Wall Street. Talking of Wall Street, there was noise about an elite money manager who was eating the market share and was handling money for everyone, from charities to royalties of Europe. Seeking to regain market share, Rampart Investments assigned its top portfolio manager Harry Markopolos the task to reverse engineer these returns and replicate them. On further digging, Harry was stunned on discovering that this elite manager was none other than Bernie Madoff, who shockingly was not even registered as an investment advisor. Madoff Investments headquartered on the 19th floor of the renowned lipstick building on Wall Street. Little did the employees know that just 2 floors below them, on the 17th floor, the 19th floor was always in pristine condition. Even personal items such as photo frames had to follow the office's black or silver color scheme. It was all part of maintaining Bernie's desired image on Wall Street, perfect and polished. In stark contrast, appearance of the 17th floor was identical to its illegal operations. Cluttered, unorganized, and filled with fake printed reports, storage boxes, and old computers. Employees from the 19th floor were restricted from entering the lower floor office, and surprisingly, even Bernie's own sons weren't allowed to step foot on the 17th floor. Harry's extensive investigation left no room for doubt. All signs pointed to the fact that this had to be a fraudulent scheme. He wanted the dirty player to be thrown off the field, so he prepared an 8-page report and sent it over to the SEC. He was certain that something illegal was going on there. Convincing SEC of the fact that Bernie Madoff was running a fraud was an enormous task, because, as discussed previously, Bernie held a prominent position of influence and respect within Wall Street. By the end of 2000, the value of Bernie's scam had grown to over $30 billion. Global markets were falling like never before. Investors everywhere were scared and were looking to liquidate their investments. Madoff's clients started turning to him for withdrawals from all over the world. The flood of withdrawal requests showed no sign of stopping. By December, the cumulative amount requested for withdrawal built up to over $1 billion, but the amount left with Bernie was only $300 million. At this point, Bernie had accepted his fate and realized that the firm was under the water.
I am under the water. Please help me. Here too much raining.
On December 10, Bernie called his wife Ruth and said this.
I'm coming home with the boys. I have something to talk about.
In their Manhattan penthouse, Bernie Madoff said he had a confession to make.
He said, everything I've been doing is all a big lie. He said the business is a Ponzi scheme.
Exactly what Harry Markopolos predicted over 8 years ago in a submission to the SEC. Between 2000 and 2008, Harry submitted 5 reports to the SEC, trying to convince them in taking action against Madoff. The world's largest hedge fund is a fraud was a 25-page in-depth report submitted by Harry on November 7, 2005. He brought light to 29 red flags concerning the operations and practices of Bernie's investment scheme and concluded that there are too many red flags to ignore. Bernie Madoff is running the world's largest unregistered hedge fund, and finally, Madoff Securities is the world's largest Ponzi scheme. Let's understand what a Ponzi scheme is. The term is named after Charles Ponzi, who defrauded people of over $10 million in the 1920s. Essentially, money from new investors is attracted by promising lucrative returns, and then this new money is used to pay past investors. In a simplified example, if a schemer starts by taking $100 from 2 investors and promises them to double the money, in round 2, he would need to find 4 investors committing $100 each to pay back the round 1 investors. If he convinces investors in round 2 to invest, let's say, $125, he would pocket the extra $100. The schemer may show you fake profits to make it seem like your investment is doing really well, but in reality, no legitimate business or investment is happening. It's a scam that relies on a continuous flow of new money to keep going. In this case, Bernie's team would carefully examine previous trading sessions and selectively record entries and exits to create an illusion of profitable trades. It was like placing bets on a horse race that had already concluded. On hearing what their father had to say about the investment advisory business being a Ponzi scheme, Mark and Andrew were disgusted. Call it betrayal or karma. Bernie's own children reported him to the FBI.
The FBI arrested him this morning.
A federal judge ordered Madoff, who is 71 years old, to serve a maximum 150 years in prison.
As much as $50 billion is gone.
Families had entrusted their entire life savings to Bernie Madoff. People had invested in his fund with dreams of sending their children to college or securing their retirement. Bernie Madoff wasn't the only one responsible. SEC also had a role to play in this catastrophic failure. Harry Markopolos had brought this case to the SEC over 8 years ago, labeling it as a Ponzi scheme, but the SEC never looked into Bernie hard enough.
I gift wrapped and delivered the largest Ponzi scheme in history to them, and somehow they couldn't be bothered to conduct a thorough and proper investigation.
The sole purpose of a regulator like SEC is to protect the investors.
One guy with a few friends and helpers discovered this thing nearly a decade ago, led you to this pile of dung that is Bernie Madoff, and stuck your nose in it, and you couldn't figure it out. If you are the watchdog, you have totally and thoroughly failed in your mission.
Despite the multiple failures and negligence exhibited by regulators and fund managers, no one was held accountable apart from Bernie Madoff, who received a punishment of 150 years in prison. The imprisonment of Madoff may initially seem like justice for the victims. However, what unfolded next only deepened the frustration and outrage of not just the victims, but also the general public and media. To assist the victims in recovering their lost funds, the Securities Investor Protection Corporation, or SIPC, appointed Irving Pickard. However, he made a decision that led to public outrage and protests. His decision to use the net equity gain method for repaying victims sparked significant controversy. This approach meant that investors who had more withdrawals than deposits would be required to repay their net gains, which would then be used to compensate investors who had made more deposits than withdrawals and were in a net loss position. The implications of this decision were far-reaching. To illustrate the consequences, let's consider a scenario where my grandfather invested with Bernie and regularly withdrew funds during his retirement, resulting in total withdrawals exceeding his deposits. These investments were subsequently transferred to my father and then to me. Now, 30 years later, I am being asked to return the net gains for withdrawals that my grandfather had made. However, my father may have used that money to cover medical expenses or fund my college education, and these expenditures were already subject to taxes. Essentially, Irving Pickard's approach involved taking money from one group of investors and giving it to another group of investors. The victims were getting victimized. Using this method, Irving was able to recover about 70% of the original investments. Let's take a look at some of the co-conspirators and their punishments. Annette, who was Bernie's personal assistant on the 17th floor and managed relationships with the biggest clients, received a prison sentence of 6 years. Jerome O'Hara and George Perez, the software engineers responsible for developing the proprietary software that helped create fictitious trade records and account balances, were sentenced to 2.5 years in jail. Peter Madoff, Bernie's brother and the firm's chief compliance officer, was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Frank DiPascali, Bernie's main man, surprisingly cooperated with the officials and provided detailed information about the operations and helped investigators navigate the intricacies of the case, was expected to be sentenced after the case concluded. He passed away from lung cancer within 4 weeks of the case's closure. Brothers Mark and Andrew were proven innocent. However, the intense public scrutiny and negative attention took a toll on Mark's mental health. Tragically, on the 2nd anniversary of his father's arrest, Mark took his own life and was found hanging in his Manhattan apartment, while his 2-year-old son slept peacefully in the next room. The events left their mother, Ruth Madoff, in a dire situation. She was forced to give up all family assets and became essentially homeless, living out of a car for weeks. The younger son, Andrew, lost his life to cancer in September 2014. In 2021, Bernie Madoff passed away at the age of 82 while serving his prison sentence. He had been battling a chronic kidney disease. Following his death, it was reported that his ashes were placed at a lawyer's office as his family members refused to accept his remains.
By benefiting one person, you're disadvantaging another person. And the basic concept of Wall Street, which sometimes the regulators lose sight of, as do the academics, is it's a for-profit enterprise.